plasma is just this random stream of disassociated electrons and ions. A plasmoid is a coherent, self-organized structure. That's a plasmoid, as contrasted with just a plasma, see?
Okay.
So he had developed technologies for harvesting plasmas and turning them into plasmoids and applying those principles to a number of practical solutions, like how could you, for example, use this to increase the efficiency of an internal combustion engine?
A Kodega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with a Kodega and sharing one of yours. Click that like.
Yeah!
If you're new here, subscribe and have the bell hit for notifications to stay up to date on all of the new content. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, wherever you may be. This is Rye here, your guide for Kodega's Codex of Curiosities. In tonight's Curiosity, we're going to have some rabbit holes to dive into. We're going to have some tales to tell. And we have an esteemed guest on, one that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Well, I've been saying that lately often. And tonight we have Randall Carlson on. So I'm really excited about that and to just see where that conversation takes us. You know, I think it's going to have a mind and some legs of its own, and it's just going to travel down some paths that just naturally going to go. On that note, just some quick little housekeeping. You know, I want to say thank you to everyone who's sharing the show. I really want to say a shout out to Amber. You've been doing amazing sharing the show. That really helps grow the show. So sharing is the biggest thing you guys can do. Also, next biggest thing, I have a Patreon. So I have a $5 Patreon and a $25 Patreon. Go check it out. The link's down below. I also have a store as well. And if that interests you, there's a lot of items in the store: shirts, cups, mugs, hats, you name it, we got it. Well, without further ado, I think it's time we bring on Randall, and welcome to Kodega's Codex of Curiosities.
Well, thanks for having me, Rye, and I've got to confess here, I'm a little bit kind of nervous now after that intro. Oh my God, what am I getting into here?
What did I do? What did I sign up for? Yes, I know. It's like, well, here we go. Yeah, I've been pretty excited to have you on. You know, I've listened to you on other shows, including one of my favorites, Graham, from Grimerica as well. You know, Graham speaks highly of you. And I was like, I need to get Randall on. So I really appreciate you, writing me back and setting this up.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm glad that Graham did hook us up, and he prepared me. He warned me and everything. So I think I prepared.
Perfect. Yes, the last couple of weeks, I've had some other great names as well. Some other people I've been tracking down, and that sounds terrible to track down. Gary Wayne. I don't know if you know Gary Wayne from Genesis 6 Conspiracy. Really interesting. He talks a lot about the Nephilim and fallen angels and Mount Hermon. Very interesting. So I just had him on last week, and then L.A. Marzulli as well, talking about Nephilim. I find Nephilim extremely interesting and very intriguing, and I think it all ties. It kind of in a way ties together with possibly great deluge, the great deluge, the great flood, which seems to be something that all cultures talk about.
Well, you're absolutely right. Not all cultures, but most
Mm.
cultures. We have evidence from pretty much every continent except for Antarctica of, and who knows what awaits us in Antarctica. But
Yes.
we won't go to the South Pole for tonight's discussion. We'll save that.
We'll save that for another night. And sorry, Randall, I think I jumped the gun here. Why don't you give us a little introduction about yourself and maybe where everybody can find you?
Okay. Well, randallcarlson.com would be the place to go for everything Randall. And who am I? Well, I'm just basically a country boy. I'm sort of a mix between when I was in school, I was half rebel and half nerd. And it just depended on, I guess, which day it was or where my biorhythms were at or what. But I love to read my books, but I also got into a lot of scraps. I grew up learning carpentry from my father, who was a carpenter, and from my grandfather, who was Swedish immigrants, all on my father's side. That's where Carlson comes from. All Swedish immigrants came over. My grandmother married my grandfather, and they were both Carlson, so a Carlson married a Carlson.
Okay.
And when I went on Tucker Carlson's show, we joked, and we both suspect we may be very distant cousins. I wouldn't be surprised if that
Some
was
relation there, some relation.
Yes, I think we had a pretty good meeting of the minds, but that would be just the icing on the cake if it turned out well. Hey, yeah, I think we are third cousins. Anyways, so yeah, I grew up. I learned carpentry. I was like a child of the. I came up as an infant and small child in the 50s, an adolescent, a teenager in the 60s, and a young adult in the 70s. So I was young and single in the 70s. So, but we're not going to talk about that.
Single and ready to mingle. Yes.
Yeah, single and ready. And that was pretty much, from what I've heard anyway, I've heard that 70s was the time. Single in your 20s and so on. But anyways, that's of no relevance to tonight's conversation. But, I did some things late 60s, early 70s, like a lot of folks did. And it opened my eyes to, in my mind, to some of the bigger questions. And I kind of got obsessed. So I began studying and researching and learning and finding teachers and began a lifelong quest for deeper understanding of, the mysteries of time and space, the world we live in, what all of this means, where did we come from, what is really our authentic history as a species on this planet. All of these questions have occupied my mind obsessively now for, well, literally, I realized, oh my God, over a half a century. Literally over half a century. I dropped out of high school. I was supposed to graduate in 69. I'm actually class of 69, but 69, whatever was going on in high school was pretty much completely irrelevant to everything that was going on elsewhere in the world. So later I went back, did a few months of night school, made up that last year, and got awarded a diploma and so on. But then I went on to, I didn't want to join the corporate world. I hung out as an independent on a lot of time on the University of Minnesota campus because I was from Minnesota, and I had moved in. Once I moved away from home, I moved into a sort of the bohemian section of Minneapolis called the West Bank, which was sort of back then, it would have been sort of like the Haight-Ashbury of the Midwest, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
So there was a whole scene happening there and some very interesting people from other cultures. I managed to make the acquaintance of a Brahmin priest and studied ritualism with him for about 2 years. made the acquaintance of a Himalayan Swami and studied with him for about the same duration. Now, all of this time, I'm gradually picking up some building and carpentry skills. And then come about 1971, when I decided to try to walk the spiritual path, I thought, okay, I got to clean up my act and really learn some life skills here and probably find a legal way to make a living. So after those considerations, I said, okay, I am going to go ahead and really try to learn some of these skills, the craftsman. Like I said, wasn't really interested, didn't want to work for the government, didn't want to work in the corporate world, didn't want to wear a coat and a tie. So I elected to become I guess you could call me a hippie carpenter. And as a result of that, I did work. I worked pretty much for myself as independent, and I would just start contracting out. People needed something, and I would build it. And then while I was doing that by daytime and in my off time, I'm exploring, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm seeking out people, teachers that can maybe perhaps enlighten me about things, help me answer some of the questions that are just obsessing me. And so then in the 80s, early 80s, my brother showed up, and he had also been, hippie carpenter, except interlude. He had gone to India to an ashram and was learning all of the secrets of tantric yoga and all of that. He brought that back. We partnered up in the early 80s and kind of officially launched a legal formal building company and began to hire employees and all of that. And what I quickly learned was, okay, I'd spent 10 years learning the craft of carpentry. I didn't know shit about building. Didn't know shit about business. It took another 10 years to learn. So we went through a whole iteration of a company, got pretty good, did some amazing projects, had 18, 20 people on the payroll, and then come late 80s, early 90s, it kind of came unfrayed. So we regrouped. We were able to, about 95, I had started teaching mathematics. I had gotten drafted by a friend to substitute at the Waldorf school system. I don't know if you know anything about Waldorf. That was
no, I don't know too much. I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Well, there's a whole system of Waldorf education, and it's based upon the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner, who was like an early 20th century mystic and seer and author, researcher. Yeah, Rudolf Steiner. So Waldorf is a system of education that came off from his philosophy, and I'd known people off and on who were involved in that because some of the times, I'll just interject this, around 1980, 81, I had now been studying things specifically. Well, let me back up a little bit. In 1971, I went on a yoga retreat with this Himalayan Swami Rama that I mentioned. And what we did back then, Buckminster Fuller domes, Buckminster Fuller, the name Buckminster Fuller.
I've heard it.
He was check him out. Anybody listening, he's worth checking out. He was definitely a visionary who worked with geometry. He invented the geodesic dome. If you know what a geodesic dome is, you've seen dome structures that are assembled.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, all the triangles.
We call those Bucky domes. Right, those Bucky domes. Buckminster Fuller. He was a polymath who did all of this stuff, wrote these amazing books. I've got them back here in my library called Synergy. And anyway, so in this group, we had an architect who had designed a couple of domes because we were going to have, we bought this land in northern Minnesota, in the forests of northern Minnesota, and we were going to hold retreats up there, but we needed a place like where people could gather, where like if it was inclement weather, we could gather, have lectures, all of that. And then, we wanted to build a place that would be a special, in effect, like a private cabin for whoever came in to do the presentations and all of this. So it turned out that there weren't too many carpentry experienced or builders in the group. So me and my brothers kind of got drafted, and we ended up being the sort of the lead carpenters on building these two geodesic domes. One of them was based on the geometry of an Indian, like a kind of a cross between a stupa and an Islamic mosque. It came to a point at the end. I could actually pull up some pictures of it as we go along here. But as a result, we had to figure out how to integrate all of these geometric triangles into two different. One was a 3/8 dome. Imagine you've got a sphere.
Okay.
You slice it so that along its axis there's a small section that's 3/8 of its diameter, and the other side is 5/8. So that would be a 3/8, right?
Okay.
Now, imagine you've got a sphere and you slice it at 3/8. You take the 3/8 and set here. It's going to be a shallow dome with a wide base.
Yeah.
You take the other half, which is 5/8. You flip it upside down, and now it actually cants outwards before it slopes back in. If you can picture, because it's more than
yes.
You've got that picture, right?
Yeah.
So we had to figure out all this geometry and how to make that work. And I found that very challenging, but really fun. And then a year later, the dome we built, it was called the Bindu Dome because it came up, it represented a point of light emanating from the ultimate singularity of creation occupied by God, who was emanating light out. So it had all of this symbolism in it.
Okay.
So there's two things. I got interested in the geometry and the challenge of figuring out how to put this thing together. But then the symbolism that was encoded into the design of this thing, which intrigued me as well. So about a year later, I should have had it ready to pull up, but this large publication came out called Shelter. And I think it's gone into a couple of reprints. It's really, for anybody who's interested in the history of building an architecture across the spectrum of various historical periods and cultures and ethnicities and stuff, it's really awesome. So what it does is it goes through, and you might talk about, building yurts up in Siberia. Might talk about, American Plains Indians building teepees. It might talk about building out of, adobe. It might be talking about building out of mud, out of brick, out of stone, and a whole cross section of examples from around the world, and how indigenous peoples and how our ancestral peoples and so forth solved the problem of interacting and integrating with their environment through building an architecture.
Fascinating.
So really good stuff. So
yeah,
so it turned out that this book devoted a whole entire large spread dedicated to the Bindu Dome, this dome we built with the. So, and I don't remember if I'm not into two pictures. My younger brother is, so I'm thinking that I maybe took the pictures or somebody else. I was mostly on the 3/8 dome. My younger brother was mostly on the Bindu. So
Bindu.
I may have taken the pictures because I'm not in, but featured front and center is my little brother. He's like 17 years old at the time, without a shirt, wearing his tool belt, and he's the lead carpenter on this project, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and I could pull those up actually.
What we could do, Randall, is if you share them with me after, I can actually, when I'm editing the video, I'll just put them on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So then one of the things that really intrigued me, and it was in this book Shelter, which was almost like an oversized magazine.
Okay.
It was large.
Yeah, I can picture that, like those big, like the Life magazine at the end of the year. The end of the year Life magazines, which are always like these bigger ones, kind of thing. Yeah,
that's probably exactly what it was. So there was a number of different things I read. It was the first place I think, encountered the term sacred geometry.
Okay.
And it was definitely the first place I ever learned about the so-called golden ratio, which you probably heard of the
Fibonacci. Is that the Fibonacci spiral?
Yes. Well, they're definitely related.
Okay.
Yeah. The divine proportion, sometimes it's called. And basically what that is if in the simplest way to visualize it, think of a line.
Okay.
Basically one dimension, a line. Okay, so now you divide that line in the middle, and what you have is two exactly equal parts, but there's nothing dynamic connecting those two lines. They're just static, right? The ancient builders and architects and artists, master artists, knew that you wanted to, if you were going to divide, you can start a hole, cut it up into parts, whatever the composition might be. It could be a canvas, it could be a garden, it could be a building. It doesn't matter, right? It could be mosaic tile, like they did so spectacularly in at the height of classical Islam. Anyway, so you divide that line asymmetrically, but there's one point that is the magic point. That magic point divides that line so that you have a ratio between the small side, the long side, and that ratio is exactly, precisely equal to the ratio between the long side and the whole line. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes. Yes, it does. Yes,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're. Yeah.
Right. And so now you've got two ratios that creates a proportion. And this was the secret. You're looking for proportion, and you're looking for proportions that that represent harmony. And there are
Okay.
certain proportions that just empirically we see by observing nature seem to be prevalent. That nature is using certain proportions to accomplish the artistry and the feat of creation. So we discover, for example, that asymmetrical dividing of a line
Yeah.
is built into human anatomy. In fact, if you look at all of life, the whole spectrum of life, what you're going to see in there is that you've got geometry manifested prolifically across the spectrum of living and inert creation. But the golden section of all of living entities, probably the human geometry most closely expresses and approximates that divine proportion. And it starts as simple as this. Hold your hand horizontally, your elbow to fingertip in front of your face.
Okay.
This, Rye, is your personal cubit. From the elbow, from the fingertip of your middle finger to your elbow. That's your cubit. And cubit comes from the Latin cubitus, which actually means elbow. But
Interesting.
this was a typical, we all know that we use feet, and we know that in some vague way, the foot ultimately related to our feet, right?
Okay.
Those protuberances that we find at the bottom of our legs that are known as feet, right? But it also gives us the foot, right? Which is our fundamental unit of measurement. And it's divided into 12 because it was found that if you take your thumb, like thumbs up, press it down, like if I put it on this piece of paper here, like right there, right? And then I make marks on both sides like this. I'm doing this very crudely. I'm going to move my thumb. There we have an inch. And it just so happens that you have this ratio that we actually approach as a limit when you start taking many, many examples of human people, right? As opposed to
That's opposed to the hybrid people, yes.
Or the non-human people, right?
Yeah.
What you find is that ratio of your digit to your foot is 12-1.
Ah.
Okay, but let's go on. Cubit. Now here, let's circle back. Sometimes I take these long loops, but if you don't shut me up or distract me, I invariably try to come back.
No, let's do it. Yeah, let's bring it back.
Back to the cubit. Remember I said you divide a line asymmetrically so that the short is to the long as the long is to the whole. Or you could flip that. You could say the whole is to the long part as the long part is to the whole, to the short part. Well, check this out. Go up here, take your cubit, and I want you to feel around on your wrist. And if you'll, like I'm doing here, and you're going to find that there's this space. Can you find it? You find it? Okay, because if you don't have one, that's a pretty clear indication that you are not of this solar system. We're
just touching, we're just touching on the wrist for the audio. For the audio, it's right on the wrist. There's that larger bone on the outside, and it's just on the inside part of that larger bone at your wrist. Yes.
It's an indentation. It's called the space of Destin. Well, okay. Now, not everybody's perfect, right? Because the thing is, we all actually deviate somewhere a little bit or a little more from the idealized geometry. That's an important concept to keep in mind. However, here's another very important, interesting effect is that if you start bringing in, raising your cohort, if you bring in more data points, what you discover is that the more people you measure and average their proportions, the more you're zeroing in on the so-called divine proportion. So that's very interesting.
Very.
Now, studies that show that professional people, who depend on their physiques or their faces, structure, and all for a living, conform very much. And I'll show you some more examples. But here's the point. Back to this.
Okay,
If you
back to our wrist.
If you look at your cubit,
Yeah.
right here, imagine your cubit being divided in that magic point where the small is to the largest to the whole.
Okay.
That's this space right here.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, so right here, you see this where I'm right there. That wrist joint divides your cubit in the divine proportion, Rye.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that proves right there that you, Rye, are presumably a divine being.
Presumably.
I did throw in the qualifier there.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Okay, so but it doesn't end there.
Mhm.
Absolutely doesn't end there. Like if you look at
But wait, there's more.
No, I think that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
No, hold up your hand.
Okay.
Pick out one of your fingers, and actually, the one that is the most useful actually is this one. But
Okay.
I don't. Is this is this an R-rated or a G-rated? What is?
Well, we're on YouTube, but let's just keep rolling with it. It is what it is. It's not meant for children, of course. So hey.
Okay. Well, choose that. Let's take that middle finger. Now, what I want you to do is you're gonna. Let's see. I'll use mine here.
Okay.
Go from the end to your first joint, from your first joint to your second joint here.
Okay.
From there to your knuckle here. And guess what? If you go from the short to the next increment, which is somewhat longer, to the next increment, well, guess what? You've just expanded in the golden ratio. So look, that first digit there of your finger.
Yep.
From the tip to the first knuckle is to the distance between the first knuckle and the second knuckle in that proportion.
Okay. Yeah.
So take that finger, enlarge it to your cubit, and that. But seeing it doesn't stop there, because now you've also got. Let me get up here. You've got, say, the middle knuckle. The middle joint to your knuckle. Well, there it is again, from here to here to here. So it's built in. And then
the golden ratio is everywhere.
Oh, it's
everything is like fabricated upon it.
Well, not everything.
A lot, it seems. It appears.
Now, suppose you had. I'll just sketch very quickly a rectangle.
Okay.
Let's say that you do a rectangle so that the long side is to the short side in that ratio. That's called a golden rectangle.
Okay.
Now, take a human skull, a human face, and you start measuring from the hairline down to the chin. Well, assuming not. No, let's not say hairline. But where my hairline is, maybe not other.
But some of us, we instead of a 4 head, we got a 5 head. I got a 5 head up here. So yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, if you look, let's do it this way. If I take a box and I put my head in a box from top to chin.
What's in the box?
I come in here like this.
Yeah.
Guess what rectangle that turns out to be?
That'd be a golden rectangle.
Golden rectangle, and artists knew that. See, and you can divide that box, like if you divide it along the line so that you have that asymmetrical division of the line on top, and that will give you the brow line. You flip it over, it gives you the mouth. You can divide up the whole face quite intricately using this particular geometric scheme. And this was one of the secrets of, Renaissance artists, that they knew how to use some of this geometry. Some of them, it was just intuitive, but there were others who literally, there was, in fact, there's even a one that I consulted quite a bit years ago called The Painter's Secret Geometry, long out of print. If you looked it up online, I bet you it's a couple $100 at least if there's a copy floating around. I don't think they've reprinted it, but
okay.
The Painter's Secret Geometry. And that was what this was about. It wasn't just the golden section or golden rectangle. It was also, there was several numbers in a sequence. and they're based upon the transcendentals or the irrationals. I prefer transcendental, but like pi, 3.141592659, et cetera, is
Impressive. Yeah.
well, when you work with these numbers over the years, they finally get in.
It gets stuck in there. It gets ingrained.
Well, yeah, whatever my calculator, if I take my calculator, which I always have by my side, yeah, in fact, I've actually applied for a concealed carry permit for my calculator. I'm hoping to be hitting it here soon, but yeah, see, this is my favorite one. This is the one I use in my sacred geometry courses when I teach those. But
Okay.
so if I just push this right over here, the pi key, there we go.
There we go. There we go.
141592654. So actually 539, my old calculator carried it out in an extra place. So
the extra place.
See those, Rye, after the 1000th time, because you're okay, I need to figure out I need to know the volume of that sphere. Well, then I need to have the radius of the sphere. Then so on and so forth. You work with those numbers, and I'm always figuring those kinds of things out. Pretty soon, you remember it. I don't know why. A lot of people are impressed when I start rattling off these numbers to 9 digits. And I say, well, it's not that impressive because,
Fair enough. But once you recite it so many times, it just gets stuck. It gets us ingrained.
Yeah, it's not evidence of my superlative genius or anything. It's just simply,
it's just repetition.
Just repetition, just plain old repetition.
Yes.
So going back now, looping back, all of this stuff, when I was reading in this Shelter magazine, I got introduced. That was the first place I'd ever learned about the golden section and how it might have been used in architecture. Then there was a section on Islamic geometry, and I had gotten just peripherally exposed to that, trying to figure out how to build this dome. And so it talked about that there were certain geometric forms that could be incorporated into the designed or built space that would have actually psychological and emotional and even spiritual effects on anyone who entered. One of them specifically referred to a mosque in Turkey that was known that virtually anyone who went in there would immediately start crying because it was the whatever it was, the sense of a divine presence was so
overwhelming.
Overwhelming, yes. And
Randall, it's funny you mentioned this because I was talking with I don't know if you're acquainted with Sean Hibbler, and he was talking about these large structures and how they were built and used differently than what we use them for now, or at least they were tools almost in a way, and now that's kind of forgotten.
You're right, and I think that there's we're getting into some deep stuff here when we start talking about, but when we talk about sacred space, there is a coherent concept around that it's not just someone's supernatural or somebody's invested in it because of their theological beliefs or their faith in a particular belief system, but it actually has a scientific basis to it. That when you start looking at things that constitute and have fit the definition of sacred space, there is definitely a technology that's going on there. And
interesting.
Before we started recording tonight, you brought up the operative word, plasma.
Yes, we brought up plasma.
Yeah, I think that's what we're ultimately getting down to here is we're looking at things. A lot of this that I think even that you're dealing with is essentially manifestations of the fourth state of matter and energy. Because once we've gone from solid to liquid to gas into plasma, now we're in a realm where the differentiation between matter and energy becomes very blurred. And the streams of disassociated electrons and ions, because of the fact that they're now disassociated and you have these electron streams, a plasma can conduct electricity, right? Because it conducts electricity, it is now susceptible to influence by electromagnetic fields. And it turns out that certain geometric forms have this affinity for plasmas, or vice versa. In particular, the torus.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a donut shape, but if you take, and you can think of a torus, and this isn't quite right, but it's close. If you have a sphere, let's say you have a globe of the Earth with an axis.
Yeah.
And now you take the North Pole and the South Pole and you start moving those along the axis without changing the outside of the sphere. Just the North Pole and the South Pole, you start moving them until they meet at the equator.
Yeah.
Okay, you now have a torus. If you slice that torus down the middle and look at it in cross section, interestingly, you have an infinity sign.
Yes, you do.
In effect, what you're doing is when you transpose a two-dimensional infinity sign into the third dimension, you have a torus. Once you have that torus, for whatever reason, and I have no idea yet why, it's completely a mystery to me, and I don't think anybody knows why, but that now becomes the preferred form, organizing form for a plasma. And once that plasma assumes the shape of a torus, it becomes self-organizing and self-perpetuating. Why? Is because it starts drawing more matter and energy into itself, because once you create that torus, now this can, how do you do that? Well, how would you do that in the laboratory or in nature? Nature does it through weather systems. Like, for example, a tornado is a vortex. And it's only been tested now for a short period of time, but witnesses, there have been several people who have had let's say it would have been a harrowing experience, but who were able to look up the shaft, the inside of a tornado as it passed over. And now theoretical modeling is confirming that it's certainly the case. But what is happening is inside that whirling vortex is it's generating multiple plasma streams inside.
Okay. Wow.
Inside the tornado. Now that's, the vortex. Now, if you can picture a funnel cloud, right? It actually, if you take that funnel cloud, it starts let's say it's circular, and then it tapers down like a tornado. When a tornado is touching down, just before it makes contact with the ground, it's usually just that funnel cloud comes to a point. And then that point hits the ground, right? The low pressure expands. This thing is whirling around counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. But now imagine that torus. The inside of that is a funnel cloud. And what happens is if somehow you can achieve a perfect torus, and here's the ideal material for that, is water. And there have been a number of researchers who've discovered that if you can create a whole series of cavitation bubbles, small enough, microscopic, because they have to be perfectly symmetrical, because a collapsing microbubble will conform to that, what I was just showing here. Whereas a larger bubble, which is not perfectly symmetrical, you can't do it. I mean, you're not going to, and the key is that the north point and the south point have to meet at that 0 point plane.
Okay.
Right? And now you've got two whirling vortices meeting, going in opposite directions. And what happens is that whirling, the stream of electrons in a plasma stream begins to rotate extremely rapidly, thousands of RPMs, hundreds of thousands of RPMs, speeding up as it's moving towards that 0 point, right? And it's generating a plasmoid, which is a geometrical structure of a plasma. Now that's where the magic begins.
Wow. This is fascinating. It kind of brings into, I had another guest on recently, and they were talking about X points, where it's, if I recall, the X points are They almost create it's where crisscrossing is taking place kind of with a magnetic field, and it's creating, I know these aren't plasma, but it's creating portals. And he believes he actually saw one, and he saw something exit out of this wearing polarized sunglasses. We took off the polarized sunglasses, couldn't see it, put them back on, saw it, and handed them to his friend who saw the same thing. And he went down this rabbit hole of X points. And it kind of seems like, where the torus is coming together, and these points where the north and the south pole are coming together, they're creating almost an X point. It kind of sounds something like that. But sorry for interrupting you, Randall. Please go on.
Well, now think of this. Think of the equator of that sphere.
Mm-hmm.
That's a two-dimensional plane.
Yes.
And you've got that point, that 0 point, meeting at the center of that equator, right?
Okay.
You've got a circle that forms the equator of this sphere.
Yes.
You collapse the North Pole, the South Pole, they meet in the equatorial plane. You've got two high-intensity vortices of whirling electrons and ions meeting at that 0 point, rotating in opposite directions. You have now created a coherent, self-organized plasma structural system that's essentially self-perpetuating, because what it's now doing is it can draw matter into this vortex. And when that happens now, and this is actually being tested as we speak.
Okay.
We're seeing the transmutation of elements. Literally the transmutation of elements.
So alchemy.
At plasma and the knowledge of plasmas and plasmoid structures has to be the fundamental secret of alchemy. Because we are now seeing, and all of this is going to be soon publicly available. Some of it is already, and we can put links in. Well, anybody who goes to my website, I'll have links on there.
Please go. This is fascinating.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of controversy over the last year or two, because, it was November of 2022. I went on Joe Rogan's show with Graham Hancock, and the subject came up of how some of these big stones were moved.
Yeah.
For example, how do why were they building with 20-ton stones, 50-ton stones? Why were hunter-gatherers, foragers, subsistence farmers wanting to build structures out of 50-ton stones?
Yeah.
See, yes, maybe out of all of the world's cultures through history, you might have an idiosyncratic culture that for whatever reason said, hey, let's take all of our spare time and we'll quarry 20-ton stones and move them 20 miles over the landscape, and we'll build these structures out of them, and we'll point to the rising sun on.
We got nothing better to do.
We got nothing better to do. It's just like, what's your framework of reality, dude? I mean, come on. Obviously, this is such a mystery, overt mystery. But anyways, the discussion was about moving big stones. And I do remember that before we went in, Graham had asked me, let's not get into the subject of ancient technology, because, look, given what he's had to put up with from establishment archaeology and, self-appointed defenders of the establishment doctrine of our own history.
Yep.
Well, he figured, I guess what his thinking was, is let's not go into the technology thing. I'm just trying to prove that there could have been a lost culture that at least had highly sophisticated navigational skills and astronomical skills and probably mathematical skills of some kind. Certainly they knew geometry.
Of course.
So it looked like they knew geometry, they knew astronomy. They had the ability to perhaps even circumnavigate the globe. Now there's nothing so outrageous about that we can't even begin to consider that as a possibility. Well, of course, when you look at the prevailing models, I think it's a probability, not a possibility, that there was something going on in the human past that we've lost sight of.
Yeah.
But so the question came up, and Joe was raising the question of, well, why were they, moving these big stones, and how did they do that? Was it just brute force or whatever? And then Graham looks over at me, and after I'd said, yeah, it's fine, we don't need to talk about technology, he says, well, what do you think, Randall? So
well,
at that time, see, I had been in conversations with an inventor
Hmm.
whose PhD in geochemistry and a rather roguish character, but extremely brilliant, who had been a prospector in the oil industry, and but his main passion was working in the field of plasma physics, which he'd gotten interested in literally in high school. So he had been, at the time I met him, had 40, 45 years researching plasmas and the utilization of plasmas, and had come up with uh, some devices that were able
Okay.
to generate plasmoids, which again, a plasma is just this random stream of disassociated electrons and ions. A plasmoid is a coherent, self organized structure. That's a plasmoid, as contrasted with just a plasma, see?
Okay.
So he had developed technologies for harvesting plasmas and turning them into plasmoids and applying those principles to a number of practical solutions, like how could you, for example, use this to increase the efficiency of an internal combustion engine, for example.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
And one of the most basic of you know technological or engineering problems with which we are faced at the present. We got billions of cars in the world, and yeah, obviously they're spewing out carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, other methanes, as well as oxygen.
Hmm.
Well, what this inventor came up with was a way of capturing everything that would normally be coming out of the exhaust of an internal combustion engine or any engine or generator or device that was being powered by fossil fuels. And it could capture everything that's coming out of that exhaust pipe and transmute it. I've seen this working, and so have a number of other people who know more than I do about the physics of what's going on,
Okay.
who are scratching their heads and going, "I'm not sure what I just saw, but I saw it."
But I saw something. Yes.
Yes, and I can certainly pull something up here and we can look at it. And
Yeah, I would love to. Love to see that.
okay, well, let's take a look then. I'm pulling up a PowerPoint show here.
For sure.
I'll get a slide up. Let me get it into a mode. Let's see, what do I want to go for here? Now,
I love how I have like these preconceived notions how these interviews are going to go, and then it's just completely blown out and it's something else, and it's fascinating. It's like unexpected, but even better.
well, what I'm about to show you, I mean, it pertains to pretty much anything and everything else we could possibly be talking about.
For
Now,
sure.
is it possible? Now, I've got the present option here.
Yeah, so you hit present, and then it'll give you like your whole
Share screen?
screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just do a share screen. That way
Okay.
I can roll through, because there's a bunch of stuff to look at here. And
Yeah.
we
So as soon as it pops up down below, so for all those listening in audio, you're gonna watch. You're gonna want to watch the video.
Okay, so let me see what happens when I put it into presenter mode. This should work. And now let me go to present,
Mm-hmm.
share screen,
Perfect.
share screen, select window or screen, and I believe I want monitor or screen 2. Let's see here. Yep, I shall allow it.
And there we go. Let's throw it up here. All
Ah,
right.
Now check this out. Check this. This is an incredible photograph. Now, I grew up in rural Minnesota.
Okay.
Another part of the Randall history that we kind of left it. I left off, in case you were wondering, I did leave off a few details about my first 25 years, let's say. There's a few things I didn't get into, and I probably won't either, at least not publicly. But anyway,
Not yet. Yeah.
but to the best of my knowledge and research, it was May of 1965. I'd have been 14 years old, and I was up. We had a story and a half house, and my little brother's bedroom was up on the upper floor,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked the window. I looked out the window, looked to the north, and I'd got I was the only one in the room. I don't remember what day of the week it was. If it was May, I would have just probably gotten home from school, or it's weekend. I don't remember. But I looked out the window and I'm looking to the north, and I see this really strange looking cloud.
Okay.
It just looks really weird to me for some reason. And I was kind of a compulsive sky watcher as it was, but so this cloud just looked not, in fact, it looks sort of like this cloud right here that we see in this image without the funnel clouds.
Okay.
And it looked pretty ominous, and it's moving from the west to the east. So it's moving from left to right across my field of view. I'm looking to the north. And as I'm watching it, I see this tit come out of the cloud, and I'm watching it, and I'm seeing a funnel cloud organizing right before my eyes. And if you look at this image, what you'll see here is you've got one funnel cloud that has reached the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see the material that's being thrown up.
Yeah, the debris kind of all up in up and around it. Yeah.
This one hasn't touched down yet. So I saw this funnel cloud come out, and it slowly grew in length, and then a second one came out behind it.
Okay.
Right? So you've got the one in front, which is longer, and the one in the back, which was shorter, very much like what you're seeing right here in this image. Well, then the front funnel cloud hit the ground. The instant it hit the ground, I knew when it hit the ground, because it went from being almost white into suddenly turning dark gray, because it was now sucking up all of this stuff. And I watched this panorama move across my field of view, and I was so excited. When I saw it out the window, I got so excited, my adrenaline got so hyped up. I ran outside and I climbed up on the roof of my house so I could watch the whole thing. Well, from that point on, I pretty much, it was one of those things that I got really fascinated with, was tornadoes, right?
Yep.
Well, okay, so let's go on here. Look at this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would not like to be that close to that. That's for sure.
Well, depends on which way it's moving.
True. Though that being said, tornadoes I find them so unpredictable. You never know. It could just change direction on you.
Well, it could, yeah. So, but here you have this, you can see what's happening. A tornado, for a short period of time, is going to be this self-organizing system.
Yeah.
Right? That's the key here. So you've got this sort of this random, well, at first, before the precursor to a tornado is a supercell. And there has to be a certain set of conditions that come together to create that supercell before it can then organize coherently into what you see here, a funnel cloud. And once it does that, that's now, you see, once it starts going like that, that's when it starts generating the plasma bolts inside.
Okay.
We can't see that because they're inside, but all up and down this funnel cloud, if you were able to look in there real time, what you'd see is dozens and dozens of lightning bolt-like flashes from one side, zigzagging back and forth through the inside of the funnel cloud. And so the funnel cloud is generating plasmas. Nature is doing that. So I'm going to have to go through a bunch of stuff quick.
Not a problem.
I skipped a few things because I think I've got close to 200 slides in this slideshow, so we don't have time for all of them. But we'll show this real quick here.
Okay.
This is called a rank Hilch vortex tube. And this is it's basically all just geometry. There's no moving parts. But what happens is, okay, check this out. It says air supply. So you're feeding an air supply into this thing here under room temperature. This is room temperature air being supplied as a compressed gas.
Okay.
And it comes into this vortex spin chamber, and if the pressure is great enough, then what happens is it sets up a spin. It starts spinning. And once it starts spinning, it begins to form a horizontal, think of it as a horizontal tornado.
Okay.
And the air starts moving down the shaft until it gets to this control valve. And the control valve is set up in such a way that it separates the hot component from the from the cold component. Let me take care of this. You're not going to believe this. You heard my phone ringing.
Yes.
I'll call him back. It's the inventor.
Oh, we were talking about synchronicities before, and here we go.
And I didn't want to answer the phone because I knew if I did, I mean, we would have to. What we would have to do is, if we were bringing him in on the call, we would need to essentially devote an episode to it.
Yes.
So I'll call him back. You see, there's some things in the pipeline right now, and he's undoubtedly calling me to give me an update.
Cool.
Okay, but let's get back to the vortex.
Yes. So this valve, which is like it almost kind of like a little bit of a needle valve, is separating the hot air, or like separating to two components. You're saying?
Yes, and then check out what the white arrows here is. What it's doing is it's reversing the flow of the colder component, and it's creating a secondary vortex whirling opposite to the main outside vortex, but it's inside. So you now got four vortices, one whirling this way on the outside and the other one whirling this way on the inside. Then by the time you get down here to the other end, you've got cold air coming out this end and you've got hot air coming out this end. And so like it says here, compressed air normally 80 to 100 pounds per square inch, or 5.5 to 6.9 bar, which is just another measure of pressure.
Air pressure,
is ejected tangentially here through a generator into the vortex spin chamber, which is this, at up to 1 million RPMs. This airstream revolves toward the hot end down here, right, where some escapes through the control valve. The remaining air, still spinning, is forced back through the center of the outer vortex. The inner stream gives off kinetic energy. And when we look at this other version of it, this is what like Wikipedia talks about. Now this device is used in cooling nuclear reactors. It's used in the air conditioning industry. There's a bunch of applications for it. Nobody knows how the hell it works. So the vortex tube, also known as the Rank-Hilch vortex tube, is a mechanical device that separates a compressed gas into hot and cold streams. The gas emerging from the hot end can reach temperatures 390 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And the gas emerging from the cold end can reach minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Jeez.
So you can think about this. You're introducing air at room temperature, spinning it to a high number of RPMs, and then something happens. And this device then separates the hot component from the cold component. And right here, we've got measured, proven differentials coming out of difference of 450 degrees.
Exactly. Yeah. The delta T is 450 degrees.
Yeah. So pressurized gas is injected tangentially into a swirl chamber near one end of the tube, leading to a rapid rotation, the first vortex, as it moves along the inner surface of the tube to the far end. A conical nozzle allows gas specifically from this outer layer to escape at that end through a valve. The remainder of the gas is forced to return in an inner vortex of reduced diameter within the outer vortex. Gas from the inner vortex transfers heat to the gas in the outer vortex, so the outer layer is hotter at the far end than it was initially. The gas in the central vortex is likewise cooler upon its return to the starting point, where it is released from the tube.
And so what you're saying, this mechanical device doesn't have any moving parts, more or less, other than the valve that you have at the end. Like it's a solid device that
even the valve is not moving.
Okay.
The only thing that's moving is the airstream.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's moving here. And finally, and here's where it gets really interesting and connects with what we were previously talking about.
Okay.
This approach relies on observation and experimental data. It is specifically tailored to the geometrical shape of the vortex tube and the details of its flow, and is designed to match the particular observables of the complex vortex tube flow, namely turbulence, acoustic phenomena, pressure fields, air velocities, and many others. But the thing I've got underlined is the importance of the geometrical shape here, right?
Okay.
Okay, so now we're getting into some devices. Okay.
Okay.
So if you look at this simple assembly here,
Yeah.
this is okay. So up here you've got what could be a carburation system and a generator.
Yeah. That's definitely what it looks like. Yes.
Exactly. But now you've got this. So you'll notice here air intake at the top of this chamber,
Mm-hmm.
and it is called a pre-ionization chamber because what it does is it subjects the molecules to ionizing radiation in the wavelengths of about 100. It's ultraviolet light at about 100 microns. Okay.
Okay.
Then, and there's a reason for that. So what it does is it excites the electrons within the atoms in the air. It excites those electrons, and by that means, it makes it possible to reduce the temperature that is necessary to begin generating plasmas. Now, it goes from the pre-ionization chamber down this pipe. It feeds into the plasmoid generator bubbler. And this is filled with water. There's a diffuser at the bottom that produces billions of bubbles.
Okay.
And out of those bubbles, a certain percentage of the microscopic bubbles are going to be spherical. Okay, so now this then feeds down here, comes in, and there's a pipe going up here into this sphere.
Okay.
And you can see that there's a apparatus, there's a connecting device coming into the side of the sphere.
Mm-hmm.
That is the swirl chamber. So that is serving the purpose of this right here.
Okay.
And that piece coming in from the side is feeding in something tangentially to the swirl chamber, except now the swirl chamber is a sphere rather than a square, which changes the geometry. Okay.
Yes, you were saying that about the geometry. So what does the circle, can you explain what the change in geometry results in? What is the result if you change the geometry? So from the, we had a cylinder, now we have a sphere.
Right. So you're feeding into the sphere at high pressure. So
Okay.
it's setting up this whirling effect inside the sphere.
Okay.
And just like in the vortex tube that we looked at, that vortex of whirling air would now pass down the cylinder.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. However, it's not just one cylinder and it's not just one sphere, as you're going to see in a minute. So you've also got another pipe coming in this way.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things can happen here. You can be feeding in fresh air from the outside, or you can be capturing the effluents coming out of the tailpipe of your engine or generator.
Okay.
And that is fed back into the system. See, and that principle is one of the things that just ramps up by orders of magnitude the efficiency of this particular system. Now here you've got a water,
and then that by doing that makes it that type of technology want to be suppressed.
Well, up to now it has been suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you, Rye, it's too late now.
Perfect.
It's out, dude. It's out. It's as we're speaking, it's moving out like a seismic wave around the planet as we're speaking. So the water is fed in here, and then it's fed here, and then comes up through this bubbler. So this is where the water is in here, and it's generating billions of bubbles to increase the number of smaller bubbles. The shaft of this cylinder is filled with a type of steel, almost like a steel wool mesh. But it's almost like the kind of a steel scour pad you would use on a clean a frying pan. But it's got real sharp edges. And the idea is those bubbles coming up through there, they're split, then they're split again, and they're split again, and they're split again. And at some point, you're generating enough of the microbubbles that are symmetrical that now the piston action of the engine, which has a compression stroke and a vacuum stroke, is alternating, right? The vacuum stroke pulls the water through the system, generates the bubbles, billions of these bubbles. The compression stroke now causes those bubbles which through a process called cavitation, they collapse
Yeah.
on their axes and they form the toruses. And when they form those toruses, all of a sudden, magically, a plasmoid, in effect, appears almost supernaturally. And now, yeah. So now here's the thing. So now what's coming out of the top of this plasmoid generator are plasmoids, and that plasmoid stream is now being fed into the thunderstorm generator. And so here's what's happening. Instead of air, you're feeding in a stream of plasmas, and you're creating these two concentric vortices, but not of air, of plasma.
Fascinating.
Oh, man, it is incredible. So now what happens? Well, you'll notice this thing is called a thunderstorm generator.
Yeah, I saw that. Yes.
Okay, so now you've got, remember what happens in the vortex tube? It creates a hot and a cold.
Yeah.
Do you know what creates tornadoes and supercells? Is what happens? You start bringing in a hot front, a cold front.
Correct.
The differential between temperature and moisture, the more those are arranged in the most effective or optimum ratios, the more intense can be your supercell, and then that supercell can self-organize into tornadoes or cyclonic storms. Well, now we just saw that in the Hilch vortex tube, we're taking that air, separating it.
Yeah.
What if there was a way we could bring that and bring them back together at a 0 point?
Okay.
What's going to happen?
I believe you're going to create some large vortex, and you're going to create those plasma.
Well, see, that's what's happening. Like in a thunderstorm, you've got air masses.
Mm-hmm.
But in this thunderstorm generator, you've got plasmas that are meeting at this 0 point. And this is where the magic is happening, and where we could potentially be looking at an industrial revolution that's as profound as the discovery of oil and fossil fuels. It's as profound as, the discovery and utilization of alternating current electricity. And what's more interesting is once you begin to learn about this, it begins to become more and more apparent that if there was a sophisticated technology in some ancient world, some lost culture, the number one candidate, far and away, hands down beating any other possibility, is plasma technology. Let's go on here. The thunderstorm generator technology can be applied to any internal combustion engine, jet turbine, or heat generating man-made or natural, irrespective of the input hydrocarbon or other fuel type. Fuel types tested by prototypes include gas, petrol, diesel, and oil. Fuels expected to have applications are coal and nuclear that are as yet untested.
Okay.
The size of the thunderstorm generator system is fractal. I showed you some fractal geometry right here.
Exactly.
It can be scaled up or down in size, but the proportionate ratios are crucial to its function. Aha.
Okay.
You see,
Proportionate ratios. Yeah, we circled right back. You brought us right back into this.
Well, you didn't interrupt me. So which to me is a very satisfying interview. Not that I want to hear myself talk all the time.
No, I'm speechless.
Oh, okay. This is what we like. This is what we like. Listen, I get a sort of a vicarious satisfaction in knowing other people are freaking out as much as I am about all this. So here's another schematic that kind of shows the see water separated into hydrogen and oxygen fed into this, the air inlet. So this is your pre-ionization chamber, right? Feeds over to the plasmoid generator. Then you can see that feeds into the thunderstorm generator.
Okay.
And then that feeds right into the generator or the engine. Then you've got the manifold exhaust output. Whatever's coming out of the engine fed right back in to the thunderstorm generator.
So it's almost like a self-perpetuating device of sorts, slightly, not to...
Right. It's not zero.
Yeah.
What can I say? Right. But what it does do, yeah, I mean, like every
It increases the efficiency like
yes,
beyond anything imaginable.
that's right. And wait till you see the readouts. So you've got to replenish the water. That's why you
Okay.
had the water intake. But from the testing that I'm aware of, that's only after hundreds of hours of
Okay.
operating one of these things.
hmm
And there's been about 6 of them now, I believe, at latest count that have been built and tested. Maybe 7, and I'm going to show you some of devices that are on literally on an industrial scale.
Okay.
So we won't get into this too much, but this breaks down what's happening in the pre-ionization chamber.
Okay.
Then we have the plasmoid creator. This is where the water and the bubbles are created.
hmm
And so here you've got your
The
oxygen,
bubbler.
the bubbler, right?
Yeah.
Same kind that you would have in a fish tank.
Yeah, it looks. Yeah, that's exactly why I knew what that was as soon as even without even seeing the diffuser stone. Yeah, because
Well, see, here's the awesome thing. Like Jordan Collin over at Alchemical Science out of Australia, he is now written. He's been working with Malcolm for about the inventor, for I don't know 6, 8, 9 months now. He has produced a do-it-yourself build guide showing, your backyard mechanic or garage tinkerer or whatever how to build one of these things.
wow.
The hard part here, the difficult part is the sphere. The sphere has to be virtually perfect, and then the higher the quality of the metal,
hmm
like some of the more recent prototypes that have been built are actually now using aerospace materials.
Okay.
But you can get them without necessarily optimum functioning, right? But the critical part is that sphere. You
Yeah.
can't, it can't be oblong, or it has to be very close to a perfect sphere to get that that swirl that you're looking for inside it. Then that swirl has to now pass into a cylindrical tube without having the transition area between the sphere and the cylinder inducing turbulence.
Okay.
So you can't just take the sphere, cut a hole, and plug a cylinder into it. You have to have a transition piece between. And I'll show you. You'll see this as we go through. Okay, so then this is a cross section. It shows you right here all the parts you need to get if you want to build one of these things, right?
Yeah.
So if any of your viewers or listeners are interested, I mean, I would send them to Jordan Collins' Alchemical Science, and you can actually get a do-it-yourself guide that will show you how to build these things. And I know that right now, several welders and annealers and metalworking people are working on being able to produce the really perfect spheres,
Yeah.
at an affordable cost, because that is the priciest part of the whole system. And here's a generator being delivered to a site for testing. This is an apparatus, a test apparatus that is not for engines. It's actually for smokestacks, coal stacks, and things.
Okay.
Where you retrofit, and India is looking at this technology right now, which is a retrofit to a coal stack, and it's catching all the effluents coming out of the coal stack and feeding them back and then breaking them down at the atomic level. And we're going to show you that in a minute. I'm not going to play the video here, but this is actually a video clip. And again, you can get this. This will be online. I'll have the links to this on my website. And look, here's an industrial-sized thunderstorm generator that's just being fabricated. And
Yeah.
you can see the cylinder coming into the sphere right here.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, now, I'm going to keep going here. These are some of the fittings that are going to be bringing in, that actually are going to be carrying. On the one hand, it'll be carrying effluents coming out of an industrial scale generator. On the other hand, it'll be carrying the plasmas. We'll just keep going here. I'm just, this is the assembly.
Yeah. No problem. No
process.
problem.
But yeah, people can here's actually in a machine shop. They're fabricating the spheres.
Okay.
And here's some that have come off the press.
Yeah.
Beautiful things. And here's completed.
Ooh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Remember the control valve?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a. Remember, it was a.
Yeah, it was a cone shape, like it was
Yeah.
like an almost like a needle valve of sorts.
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
I was. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, so here's three bubblers. They're going to feed into this system here. So what they did was they did last summer. They uh, they built an industrial scale system. We'll call it the thunderstorm generator system.
Mm-hmm.
These are the schematics of it right here, but we won't spend too much time here. So now we get to this three-dimensional blow-up view, and you can see that you're actually looking at a sphere inside a sphere.
Oh, yes.
And you'll notice there's a transition piece right here connecting, right? Now
Like
this
a collar. Mm-hmm.
like a collar, right? Well, it turns out that the ratios of the spheres, of the cylinders, and the angles of the transition pieces are not random.
I would not believe so.
Right. Um, we'll just keep going here. Um, okay, so you see here 24, a sphere. Now, in this particular design,
Application, yeah. 24-inch diameter.
the one on the inside, 18-inch,
Mm.
6-inch pipe. Inside that is a 4-inch pipe. So now here's a difference.
There's that ratio again.
Right. Now, check this out. You saw that in the vortex tube that we looked at, it's all in one cylinder.
Yeah.
You've got a vortex inside a vortex, and they leak into each other. Here, the inner vortex is being channeled along the 4-inch pipe, and the larger, the warm, the hot, is coming through the 6-inch pipe. So now you've got two cylinders.
Yeah.
And you, if you really want to ramp up the power, you do a third cylinder and a third sphere. And again, the next one would be 6, 4, right?
2,
3. What do you think
okay.
the next one would be?
369. If it was possibly, is that a?
Well, let's look at the spheres. 24,
Yeah.
18, right? That says, if you think of this as 4,
12?
3, 12. You got
Mhm.
it. So you'd have 24, 18, and 12. And they're in the
Okay.
range of 4 to 3 to 2.
Yeah.
And that particular number, we talked before the show about the number 108, and I said that was one of the most fundamental cosmological numbers in numerous archaic systems,
Yes.
right? Embedded in architecture and symbolism and all kinds of things, right? Well, think about this. We talked about 108. If you ever do like Hindu meditation, for example, you'll get what are called mala beads. I should have had my mala beads handy.
Yeah, I actually have a set downstairs. Yes.
Count the number of beads. If they're real authentic mala beads, there'll be 108 beads.
Ooh, okay.
Right. Now, this of course has no meaning whatsoever, but you did know, I'm sure, Rye, that a official sanctioned league ball has 108 stitches.
Of course. Yes, I knew that.
Of course, you did know that. Well, and then 4 times 108 is 432, and 432 is the well, it's also the vibrational frequency in hertz or cycles per second of the note A in what's called the Verdi scale, compared to our standard scale of 440 cycles per second, which is A in the the system of tuning that's now being used. But in other cultures,
which is off,
which is according to some people off. But yeah, so 432, and then if you double that, it's 864. Triple that, it's so if you take the octave 432 to 864.
Yeah.
Right. That's an octave leading you from A to the next note of A. From there, it would go to 864 to 1,296, and from there up to 1,728. Well, that would be the number of cycles per second if you go through 4 octaves. Well, now just take those numbers, those 4 numbers, and add 3 zeros onto each number. So now you got 432,000, 864,000, 1,296,000, and 1,728,000. And those are the 4 yugas of the great Maha Yuga cycle in the ancient Vedas. So it shows this octave structure except they're generally supposed to represent years, right? But what do they really represent? So the Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. The Dwapara Yuga is 864,000. Now, by coincidence, the diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles, right? So I mean, we get into these weird coincidences. Anyways, if you take that 432 divided by 4, you have 108. So if you're sitting down and you're meditating, Rye, and you're using your mala beads, because they are meditation beads, and generally, like in mine, the first bead is a little bit different. It's larger and a different type of a bead than the other 107, right? So if I start there and I'm holding that through the way I was taught is you use this mudra here,
Okay.
and your bead goes through, you're holding your string of beads, and then you take this finger and you roll a bead with each repetition of your mantra. And then, of course, your mantra is you attune that to your breath, and then you roll through, and you would do, once you got back to the starting bead, you know you've now done 108 repetitions of your mantra. And if that's not enough, you keep going. If you do one more cycle, it's, then it's 216, one more, 324, one more, 432. So if you sit down and you do 4 repetitions of your bead, you've breathed in and out 432 times. And the idea is, you are now harmonizing yourself with the rhythms of creation. And I think that is literally true. Now, is it coincidence that in order to get the most powerful optimal effect out of this, your spheres have to be in the ratio of 4 to 3 to 2, and your cylinders 4 to 3 to 2? Or how about this, that the optimum angle for your collar, for your transition piece, to minimize the turbulence that would completely upset the formation of the vortex? Do you know what that angle is? No, of course you wouldn't know. But I'll, excuse me, so I'll tell you. It's 51.84 degrees.
Okay, 51.84 degrees.
Yeah, 51.84. Well, that, Rye, is precisely the angle of slope to base of Khufu's pyramid, 51.84. And it turns out that angle is the optimum angle for eliminating turbulence in the transition from a spherical whirl to a cylindrical vortex.
Holy cow.
So, yeah.
That has so many more questions now. Now I'm like, I got so many more questions. Oh.
All right. So here, we'll just go through. You'll see that. So there you have. There's your collar right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're welding it. And here now you see sphere.
The sphere within the sphere there.
The sphere within the sphere. Now, they've tested them with the third sphere. But at this point, any, say, technological applications that one would have in our day-to-day existence, the 2 spheres are adequate. That third sphere and third cylinder puts it on another level.
Okay.
Excuse me. Now we're looking down the shaft. And so the 4-inch sphere connects with the 4-inch cylinder attaches to the 18-inch sphere, and the 6-inch cylinder attaches to the 24-inch sphere.
Okay.
And there you see a nice section view of it. Now we're going to just keep rolling here.
And I don't want to rush you. I only got about 15 more minutes because I do have another interview coming up. But this is, and this is being used in real world applications, as we can see. This is you guys have these installed.
Yeah, these are being tested as we speak.
Okay, tested. Yeah, I guess tested, but they are being used. Yes.
Yes. So here was a retrofit of actually 400. It's actually a 300 kilowatt Pierce generator. This is a substation plant outside of London, which at this point I'm not at liberty to disclose closer than that.
Okay.
So here we've got the plant manager and the engineer. They're they're deciding which generator should be the one that's subjected to testing. So they picked one, and here's the Thunderstorm, which is the largest component of the technology being delivered
Yeah.
to the site. And it had to be craned on. And here's the crew assembling it and fitting it up to the generator. And it's fed from down below. The
Mm-hmm.
plasma generators are down below. And then it feeds up into the Thunderstorm generator, which is this. And let's just keep going. Okay, so here, this is coming from the bubblers where the
Okay.
plasmoids are being generated and coming up, and now it's being fed into the spherical swirl chamber. And heat-resistant paint has now been put on. Installation is now complete. And so yeah, here's your bubblers down below where the plasmas are being generated. Here's the generator.
The generator.
But it's the same exact model.
Okay. Yeah.
Of the here is actually a picture of the generator that's now been.
Okay. And that's there's the exhaust gas that you're harnessing to
you got it.
Use.
You got it. Okay. So, and let's see if I can get this to play.
Oh, that's the bubbler.
That's slow motion. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But you can't hear the sound, can you?
No, I cannot.
Well, we'll save that for next time. We won't get into this. This is something here that's so extraordinary. It's
that is your I can see it's a fleur. So you're actually scoping the temperatures.
Temperature differentials.
Mm-hmm.
And they are extreme. Well,
minimum 35 degrees Celsius, maximum is almost 400 degrees Celsius.
Yeah. So we'll
fantastic.
So we'll keep going here. Okay, so this is what I wanted to get. What the next thing that we're going to get to is this is now, I think this was the one I had an opportunity last summer to go to and hang out for a weekend in a major industrial lab where one of these things was being tested. And I'll give you the context in a minute. We had two rooms. We had two identical generators set up and ran both generators using whatever the I don't remember what the fuel used. I think they were diesel, but it doesn't really matter. So calibrate them so they're both giving the same output. Okay, now one of them in its own room is now retrofitted with the plasma technology. Okay. So now we've got, I'm guessing, 10 or 12 people there. Now, some of these guys are physicists, some of these guys are engineers, some of these guys are ex-military, some of them are industry. They brought their own gas analyzers, some of them. One of the guys brought his own. There was a couple of mass spectrometers there. One of the scientists brought his own mass spectrometer because he was skeptical. So we had multiple. So I was there, was able to witness the whole build out, the retrofit of it. And so here was what we did. We flipped the technology on. We started up the generators and let them both warm up. They're both giving out virtually identical effluents, right? Which I'm going to show you in a minute. Then on the other one generator that's been retrofitted, we flipped the switch on of the plasma technology system. And within 5 minutes, you could see what's coming out of the exhaust of the generator. And I'm going to show you that on this readout. This is not fake. This is real.
Okay.
So this is at 11 minutes and 53 seconds after 10 a.m. in the morning. Carbon dioxide, 9.3% coming out of the generator pipe is exhaust pipe is 9.3%. Carbon monoxide, 5.48%. Oxygen, 4.66. Hydrocarbons in parts per million, 199 parts per million. Nitrous oxides in parts per million, 27. Go down here to 15 minutes and 39 seconds after 10, after the technology has been turned on. Look how much carbon dioxide's coming out.
We're at zero.
look at how much carbon monoxide's coming out.
0.
Look at the oxygen.
It's doubled, quadrupled, tripled, quadrupled.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this. Okay, and then you can see, likewise, there's been a major reduction in other hydrocarbons
Mm-hmm.
from 199 to 58 parts per million, and nitrous oxides from 27 down to 4 parts per million, which is negligible.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you're out there in a mountain meadow, completely unpolluted air, the optimum oxygen in that air is between 20 and 21% for human consumption, for humans to breathe. Now, how interesting and, shall we say, coincidental that what's coming out is 20.97 ox.
Very, very, very.
But now let me ask you this. Where'd the CO2 and the CO go?
All but disappeared.
Well, they didn't disappear.
What did they turn into? This is a better question, maybe.
Well, they were transmuted.
Oh, yes. Alchemy.
Right,
The plasmoid type alchemy.
So they were, right, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about you, but it doesn't matter how much I look at this. I can tell you right now, the hairs on my legs are standing up.
It speaks for itself. Just with this, it's just showing that this is it. This is our future.
Yes. But it's also our past. And that's what makes this thing so damn interesting. There's not even words. Because I think that we're not coming up with any new technology. I think we're recovering something that's been lost for millennia.
Wow.
Well, how many minutes do we have left? Do we have?
I have 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, 4 or 5 minutes.
A full 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I have this here, and I will show you something, and I think you'll begin to see the connections, and that would be a good way to sign out. So let me go back a little ways here. Do I have it here or no? It's in my other one. I got it right here at my fingertips. This should be it right here. Let's see. Here we go. Are you seeing this? The Vajra?
Yes.
Or do I need to reshare like I do in Zoom?
No, it's on there. It's on there. The Vajra thunderstorm generator.
There it is right there. This was the instrument of cosmic power wielded by Indra in the ancient Vedas. And Indra passed the secret of the Vajra on to Mitra. And Mitra passed it on to Mithras in the Persian system, which was then inherited by Zeus, carried over into the Greek system. But Zeus is shown wielding what's called the Thunderbolt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, I want you to look at this because it's all right here. Here's your plasma loop that you can see. We've got now hundreds of photographs of exactly the plasma reattachment loop on the sun. There's your conical control valve. Here's your spherical swirl chamber right here.
Yes.
And you've got the cylinders coming down. And this was likely an instrument that was part of a larger machine that was able to harvest plasmoids on a very sophisticated level. And those plasmoids could generate pressures and thrusts. And I think we're looking at, any number of things here. We're probably looking at hypervelocity space drive systems. We're probably looking at the secret technology behind moving 50-ton stones. As you can see, your Lord Indra's instrument to save the planet from imminent destruction. See, I think, we're actually reliving in our own upgraded, the next octave or two up.
I agree.
We're reliving the mythic archetypes in our own time. And there's a whole lot more to talk about here, Rye, and love to carry on this conversation.
Randall, I would love to. I definitely would love to have you back. I think we can plan for something in the next couple of months or something like that. Whenever you're free again, I would love to continue this conversation. This is enlightening and in depth. I'm not sure if I told you that I used to work. Well, I'll keep that for another conversation. But this is definitely super interesting and fascinating.
Last image. Look at his Zeus's Vajra. You see how it is here, the funnel cloud. The
yes. Yeah.
There it is. Now, when you look at that, you should be seeing it with new eyes. I'd like to tell people about the upcoming Cosmic Summit in June in Greensboro.
Please.
The plan is to have an actual demonstration of the technology on stage at the Cosmic Summit, along with other things all fitting together in an intricate master puzzle of coming together, where a lot of the questions a lot of people have had for years now, I think, are starting a week from now, where I'm taking people out into the landscapes of the great deluges. Out in what we start with Washington State, we're going to spend a week. We've got a resort reserved that we're going to use as our base camp, and we're going to move out, and I'm going to teach people how to read the language of catastrophism writ large into the surface of the earth that's been waiting 12,000 years to be rediscovered and deciphered. So that's what we're going to be doing a week from this weekend, and there's about 3 or 4 tickets left. So if anybody spontaneously wants to jump on the bus, go to Contact at the Cabin.
Okay.
Contact at the Cabin, Mega Floods Tour 2024.
Well, I'm going to have to spit. I'm going to move this one up faster than this interview. Normally my interviews are about like 4 to 5 weeks after I release them, but I'll move this one up a lot faster so I can get this out here for you.
So I really appreciate it. And hopefully
not a problem, Randall.
Maybe I'd be honored with your presence on one of these exploratory expeditions.
I would love that, Randall. I would love that. So I want to say thank you so much, and everybody can find you. What is your website again?
RandallCarlson.com.
There we go.
You can also go to howtube.com.
There we go as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Randall. I really appreciate that. And sorry to rush you here at the end. Yeah.
No, I got a lot to do before Saturday morning, so that's fine.
All right. You take care, Randall, and thank you so much for joining us here.
You got it, Rye.
Wow. Okay. that conversation had some legs, and it went in directions I never expected, but so enlightening, and I'm really excited about this plasmoid energy that he's talking about. And he's showing us the real world applications that it's coming into. They're actually doing this. So wait, it's coming, and it's super amazing. So I want to say thank you to everyone for joining me on this adventure, as you always do. And as we come to the end of another chapter, and we can see the shadows lengthening and hear the darkness whispering, it's seductive lullabies. Let us remember to keep our hearts pure, as they are beacon against the encroaching night. They are a symbol of our unwavering resolve. Until we meet again, may your curiosity always wonder, and may your light remain lit. And finally, may you always find your way home.
I look forward to our next adventure together as we navigate the mysteries that lie ahead. Until our paths cross again, keep your curiosity wandering and ensure the light remains lit.